going? It's Sam Frost here, and in today's short video we're going to look at some examples of goals in Google Analytics. So just continuing here with my series on Google Analytics, what it is, why you might want to use it, and really how to extract the most out of it so you can help to grow your business online. So in a recent video we looked at what goals are in Google Analytics, and basically to recap, goals are really where you measure valuable interactions on your website. So not just someone hitting the website, but someone taking a specific action that's got value or meaning to your business. So let's look at examples, because you're probably sitting there going, I kind of get what goals are, but what would constitute a goal? What should I actually be measuring? So we'll go through some really common examples, and hopefully that gives you some inspiration for what you should be using for goals for your business. So really, just about anything you want to measure could be a goal, but you can kind of get to the point where you wind up measuring things that aren't that important. So let's focus really on the key things that truly do matter, I think, for most businesses. So firstly, if you're running e-commerce or any kind of online retail, the most obvious goal is someone completing the checkout process and buying a product. Now, to do this, you're probably going to want to look at using e-commerce or even enhanced e-commerce tracking in Google Analytics. I won't go into too much depth on that in this video, but basically it's all about tracking the sort of revenue you make through your website, the channels that contribute most to that, all those kinds of things. And there are some great resources online on configuring e-commerce and enhanced e-commerce, which just gives you some more sort of tracking and analysis options. And depending on what platform you're using, like Shopify, BigCommerce, WooCommerce, it's probably going to be relatively easy these days to set this up. Obviously, some of this tracking was actually more difficult to do when you go back before all of these easy DIY platforms. So hopefully that helps you understand one of those key things that you should be tracking. Basically, if you sell products online, someone can buy online through your website, you need to have analytics, e-commerce or enhanced e-commerce preferably tracking enabled on your site. So make sure you go away and look that up and do that. Other examples of conversions in Google Analytics or goals, you can use the term goal and conversion fairly interchangeably, but yeah, goal examples also include contact form completions. So you might measure the goal when someone hits a confirmation page after completing a form. And that could, by contact form, I mean things like generic contact forms, request a quote forms, book a demo forms, all those kinds of things. If your form pushes the form user to a success page or a confirmation page, it's usually really easy to track that. But even if your form doesn't, so your form just, you hit submit and then it flashes a thanks for your message, will be in touch soon kind of thing on the screen, that can still be tracked, but you might have to use something like Google Tag Manager to make that tracking process easier. Without understanding what you've built your site in and how your form's constructed, I can't give a precise answer on that, but certainly tracking form interactions is really valuable. Tracking mobile phone interaction, so click to calls, that's another really useful feature in Google Analytics. You'll probably want to use Google Tag Manager to make that easier again and kind of bring that functionality to life. But basically what we're doing there is listening really for someone clicking on a link that has TEL in it. And when that happens, we fire off an event in Google Tag Manager over to Google Analytics. We basically say, hey, something here important's happened. And then we can measure what page that happened on and tie it back to a goal that's all about measuring phone calls. We can also do the same thing for email clicks as well. So if you've ever clicked on one of those mail to links that pops up your Outlook, we're also able to measure those, and they would be another example of goals we would want to measure. So really checkouts, add those sort of checkout completions, I should say, contact forms of all varieties of form, mobile phone click to calls, email clicks. Those are probably the key kinds of things you would be looking to measure as goals in Google Analytics. Now, obviously, you can measure other stuff as well, like PDF downloads. So, for example, on my own website, I've got some PDFs set up that don't have any kind of gating on them. There's no form required to download. But what I do is actually have goals set up in Google Analytics via Google Tag Manager, which I'll cover in future videos, that push out that data basically. So when someone clicks on that PDF link, they get registered as a goal, because I want to get an understanding really of how many people are accessing this PDF. Now, obviously, if I was gating that PDF, so requiring a name and email or just an email address, I would track that instead. But all I'm doing here is giving away some information for free. That's pretty basic, and I just want to know how people are interacting with it. So really anything you might want to measure in Google Analytics, you probably can measure it. If you've got something in mind that hasn't been mentioned here, you could just jump online and actually Google, how do I measure X as a goal in Google Analytics. If you wanted to measure, video plays or how far down the page someone was scrolling, all of this stuff can be done. A lot of it that's more advanced will require the use of something like Google Tag Manager, which is another product that works in with Google Analytics. But there's a lot of great resources online on that, and I will have some resources on this channel as well. There are other types of conversions as well that Google does suggest, or goals, I should say. Things like measuring how many people visit a certain number of pages on the site, so more than 5 pages, or how many people spend more than a certain amount of time on site. Depending on how your website's structured and what you know and want to understand as well about your audience, that might also be relevant to measure as well. But it's probably not so critical as measuring that product, checkout, purchase performance, the interaction with your forms, the interaction with your click-to-call numbers, and the interaction with your click-to-emails. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a bit of a rundown of some of the things you can measure as goals or conversions in Google Analytics. Basically, the sky is the limit to some extent, but think about what really adds value and makes sense to understand. The main reason you're measuring these goals, remember, is basically to understand, is my marketing working and which channels are contributing the best. So if you've got all your goals set up, you should be able to go and look back over a month or a quarter or even a year and say, right, of all those 1,000 goal completions I had, 1,000 people filled out my contact form to request a demo with me or to get a free quote. 650 of those came from Google Ads, for example, despite Google Ads maybe only being 50% of where your traffic came from. So what that would mean is that Google Ads is kind of outperforming. It's doing really well for your business. And either you've got to look at how you elevate your other channels to equal that kind of performance, or you also look at, can you squeeze more out of your Google Ads? Have you maximized your budget? Are you missing out on impression share? Could you improve your ad copy and landing pages? And all those kinds of things. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavor and an understanding for why goals are useful as well. So yeah, I hope you found this video helpful. If you've got any questions about goals in Google Analytics, why they're important, what you should be measuring especially, please do leave a comment. You can email me on info@samfrost.co.nz. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for watching. Please do subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you next time.